Welcome to The Straight Stitch, a podcast about sewing and other fiber arts. This is episode 65, and my name is Janet Szabo. I'll be your guide as we explore all things sewing. I am going back to a weekly podcast schedule. The feedback that I got last week was overwhelmingly in favor of a weekly schedule, and personally, that's just easier for me. I know it sounds strange because in some ways, a weekly podcast is more work, but I'm finding that if I let it go more than a week between episodes, it tends to fall off my radar. I may continue to do the newsletter, but only on a monthly basis, or I may decide not to do it at all because I do have a blog, and if people are interested in seeing photos of my sewing projects, they can go over there or follow me on Instagram. I did hire someone to help me with social media, so if you want to follow the podcast on Instagram, I'm over there under Straight Stitch Podcast. I also have a personal Instagram account, but I hardly ever post there, so if you want to see pictures of sewing, go to the Straight Stitch Podcast Instagram account because that's where everything will be showing up. Social media is kind of exhausting, I will not lie. I have a fun guest for today's episode, but before we get to that, I'll just chat a little bit about what I've been working on. I've been busy making class samples. I teach here in Kalispell, but I also teach down at a store called A Clean Stitch in Missoula, Montana, which is about 2 hours south of me. And I was down there last week and we set up another half dozen or so classes for them. And I've been busy making class samples to send down there. I tested out the Love Notions cadence top for a possible class. And I just have to say that Love Notions has a teacher license, which I think is a great thing because that just clarifies it for everybody. And I'd like to see more indie designers do that type of thing. So we might be having a cadence top class in Missoula, and I made a sample. I've stayed away from Love Notions patterns for myself because I'm taller than average, and I found that their patterns tend to be a little too short on me and require a bit too much fussing to get them to fit me properly. But I was pleasantly surprised to find that the cadence top was long enough, and I made the full bust option, and that worked really well. The store in Missoula also asked about me teaching a quilted jacket class, and I ran into some issues here, and I have been going back and forth about whether or not I want to talk about this, and I might discuss it on a future podcast episode. The pattern that I used is from one of the fabric manufacturers, and I thought when I started the project that I could probably knock it out in 3 or 4 hours because it's not a complicated quilted jacket, but I got into the pattern and there are some issues with the pattern. And I think that this fabric manufacturer may be revising the pattern because it's not currently available on their website. And the issues that I ran into were things like when I went to sew the shoulder seams, they didn't line up. The front shoulder pieces were 2 inches longer than the back shoulder piece. I ran into a few other problems. I was able to sort them out, but it took me the better part of a day and a half to get that jacket finished. And the part that I find frustrating is that I know enough about garment sewing that I was able to figure out what I needed to do. But I think that this particular pattern is aimed at quilters who may not have a lot of garment making experience. So it really needs to be a thoroughly tested and vetted pattern. And I don't think that it was. So if you want to know the details, go to my blog. I did a post. It's called Quilted Jacket Hell because that's what it felt like when I was making that jacket. I'm going to start working on the Tamarack jacket from Grainline Studios, and I think that one will go a little bit more smoothly. I'm also working on a Buy Annie Place for Everything tote, but that one has stalled at the zippers, and that's a dumb place for it to have stalled because I know how to insert zippers. And I just need to sit down at the sewing machine and put my Teflon foot on and sew the zippers onto the pieces of vinyl. I also got sidetracked by some Tim Holtz fabric. I love Tim Holtz fabric. I just think that Tim Holtz is a fabulous fabric designer. So I have a big bin of just about every fabric line that he's put out. And I had 4 Fat Eighth bundles of the Correspondence line from a couple of years ago. So I got those out and went in search of a pattern. And I found the Fat Eighth Flapjack pattern on the Fat Quarter Shop website. It's a free pattern. And I started working on that. I have found that Tim Holtz fabric benefits from not being chopped up too much because the motifs are fairly large. So the Fat Eighth Flapjack pattern is based on rectangles. They are 3-inch by 8-inch rectangles, and you can't get much simpler than that. So I have that one stacked up by my little Necky BF, my quilt piecing machine, so that I can just knock out a few quilt units here and there as I have time. I try not to succumb to startitis and get more projects going than I have time for, but I also know that different projects require different mindsets and different amounts of time, so I like to have a variety of projects in process because then I can work on what appeals to me at that moment or what I have time for. So that's what's been happening here. I'm going to jump right into the podcast, and I'm going to let my guest introduce herself, and you'll understand why in just a moment, but I hope you enjoy the episode. So I have a very interesting guest for today's podcast, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Well, thank you, Janet. Thank you for letting me be on this podcast. I'm Inge deGroot. Yes, that's Inge deGroot with a hard GR. And I'm from the Netherlands. And I'm a very, very amateur sewist, which I learned from my grandmother, my nan on my mother's side. And she taught me how to hand sew. So that was really fun and nice. And then I got a sewing machine, a Singer with a hand sewing machine, like the heavy ones, the black ones. It always smelled a little bit of oil. And then I just kept making Barbie clothes, little Barbie garments. And I didn't really use my Barbies for to play with, but they were my dress forms. I'm not really a narrative kind of child, but it was always kind of technical things like making draping fabric onto my Barbies and then make a Barbie garment. And that carried on a bit around my teens also. And then I went to college, and then it just went away a bit because you're doing such other things. But I studied theater and cultural studies at the University of Amsterdam. And whenever there was a project with costumes, I was in charge. So yeah, that was really fun. And for that, I used my mother's Elna 5000 sewing machine. It's Swiss made, so it's really sturdy and for heavy fabric. So I was really happy with that. And because, well, not because, but my nan had the sewing gene. She passed it on to me, but my mom didn't get it. It skipped a generation, and my mom now just gives me things to make for her. And she says, no, I can do it myself. And I know she can, but she has other hobbies, and my hobbies are all fabric related, sewing related, clothing related, fashion related. So yeah, that's kind of the big theme in this.
Because you're a garment sewist, you saw a need for custom dress forms. And
Yeah.
and I'm intrigued by this because you might know that I was a knitting designer for a number of years. Part of the reason I wrote my first book was because it seemed like all the knitting patterns out there assumed a certain base of information that was no
Mm-hmm.
longer being taught in school. And so when I started knitting, I my book happens to be on finishing techniques for knitted garments, and it was very hard to find that information. So I
Yeah.
thought, I can't find this information. I'm going to create it. And so you have a very similar story.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I know what you're talking about because, well, that's exactly what happened. I thought my idea of making a dress form like I have would be already on the internet somewhere for me to find an instruction and then just do it. But it wasn't. I was so surprised. I was really surprised because I thought I have wrapped myself in tin foil. I've wrapped myself in cling foil. I have put a kind of paper mache on me. I have bought the bootstrap dress form pattern with adjustments also from someone in Sweden who made kind of a PDF with instructions how to adjust the dress form. But I thought, just this isn't it. And I thought, well, this could be better. And also because I'm a kind of almost Northern European woman, I am tall and white just by being from this area of the world. So the adjustable dress forms I bought and also inherited one from my grandmother. They were not they didn't go far enough to actually be my how do you call it, the
Circumference?
conference. Yes. So I thought, yeah, I just that would be just endlessly padding until it's kind of my shape, but it isn't. And also I have a kind of an apple figure, and I have kind of a bee belly, and I have kind of a tilted waist, and I kind of have a how do you call it, a dowager's
Dowager's
hump.
hump? Uh-huh.
Yeah. So with all those different shapes, I thought I'm never going to get something that looks like me that I don't have to adjust while I make garments, or or that you have the frustration that when you have sewn something, yeah, you get all these awkward darts in your garment because the pattern doesn't fit. And also with my length and my size, I also gained a little bit of weight. So I already had to go to the I since I was 10, I had to I had to buy for my tallness women's wear. So yeah, that was just, and blouses and shirts were always arms were too short, pants were too short, always too short, short, short. And then I thought, well, I'm never gonna find anything in the shop that has the extra 10 inches of fabric and the right darts to fit me, just to have a normal fitting garment. And then I thought, well, this is a thing. And then I tried all those different yeah, all those different ways to trying to make a dress form, but it just didn't work out. And then I was in a little holiday house with my husband. And then I thought, and he's an electronics engineer, so he also works with 3D models for his job. And they have a 3D printer, but in a 3D printed thing, you cannot stick needles. So I thought, but if you can print things, you can also carve things. And then I thought, well, this is kind of getting into the whole development thing. Is that okay?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Okay, okay. Because
absolutely. Wait,
because then I thought,
I'm gonna stop you just real quick
yeah,
and kind of recap. So, um, I think a lot of us who sew for ourselves have run into this problem. I'm a little bit taller than average, and it took me a long time to figure out how I had to adjust flat patterns. So
right.
being able to see things on a three-dimensional form is a huge help. So
Yeah,
that was the inspiration for you. And then
yeah.
things just sort of started to fall together. So yes, please talk about the development part of it.
Development is a big word, but still. Oh, and you can already hear in my voice. I'm gonna talk faster and a bit louder because I'm so enthusiastic about it. But anyway, we were in this holiday house, and then I thought, and we just made a plan how to get to each phase, and then I thought, well, in the theater or in on festivals or even in shops, they have kind of a styrofoam blow-ups for visual merchandising. So I thought if they can shape and carve styrofoam in that shape, it's like you put styrofoam in a mold and then it expands into the mold. And then I thought, why not have me 3D photographed? I didn't know like a 3D recording, as it may, and give that to a company that can actually carve styrofoam sculptures or figures or so that was kind of the starting point, and then and then we downloaded an app to uh, to make the recording for a 3D a scan, right, a scan. And then that didn't work. And then I heard from someone who was he was gifted. She was pregnant, and she was gifted a 3D pregnancy statue of herself. And I thought, what is that? So she went somewhere, got 3D scanned with her belly, and then in a kind of motherly pose. And then they scanned that, and then they made a figurine out of that. So she had a personalized figurine of her own pregnancy. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. So I looked that up. I thought if they can scan and make 3D prints, they can scan me and I can use the print or the scan and send it to a factory who makes styrofoam statues or figures. So then I just started Googling 3D scan Alkmaar because Alkmaar is where I live in the Netherlands. And I thought, well, I could go somewhere far away to get a scan, but maybe, just maybe, there is something in the area. And there was a 3D scanning office for those figurines, for those pregnancy figurines, 10 minutes on my bike from my house. Yeah, I just tried it out. And so I called them up and I said, I just want to have a 3D scan, but I'm not going to be a kind of regular customer for, yeah, being pregnant and also ordering the statue because then they're going to make a whole statue and I didn't need that. And then they said, and that was really nice because they liked my idea. They said, well, we are training a new employee with the scanner. Would you be interested to be kind of a guinea pig for her to work to try on for a reduced price for the scan? And I said, yes, of course. And so I went there on my bike, and I got in my backpack, I got the right underwear because for the scan you have to wear the right underwear. You cannot wear black because otherwise the scanner cannot trace your forms. So I put on my best bra, my best underwear, and then I was just and then I just stood there like a dress form myself. So my arms were just a bit from my body away, so my armpit could be scanned, and also I had my legs had to stand just apart to to actually make the space where a symmetrical stand could be put in, because you have to put the styrofoam statue on the torso on a stand. So it's handy if you have the space, a kind of a centric space for that to do. And then they did some scans, and I took them all home because, I did have. They could actually make it for me to make it in the right adjustments to send to the styrofoam factory. But as I said, my husband is a engineer, so he could adjust the cut in the CAD
In the CAD program, right?
CAD program. He could adjust the drawing, the STL, the scan, and so we had some fun because he was on his laptop on the couch. We were watching TV, and I said, "Do you want your neck higher or lower, or do you want your arm longer or this way?" So that was really fun for us to do both. But if I would have found someone to do that for me, that process would have cost quite a bit more. I think because there's not a lot of people who are known to do CAD well. But I thought, if that doesn't work, I can always go on a graphic design course, or maybe a student who can just adjust it a bit for maybe taking out to lunch, or some cash, or it's not going to be really, really expensive, just to cut off my own arms a bit better, and cut off my neck a bit better, and make and put in the cylindrical gap to put the stand in, because that's kind of a big deal in cut, to actually know how big your stand is, to draw it into the STL. Yeah.
So your husband basically had to refine the
Yeah.
scan
Yeah.
and get it into a form that you could send to the styrofoam company.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was also fun because I called them. I sent about 10 companies, because I didn't know. Yeah, I just didn't know which companies were available and able to make such a thing. I just Googled a lot of companies, and some came back, no, we have that kind of machines. You need a CNC machine. We don't have that. The size of this figure that you want, we don't have the space for it. So I got a lot of feedback back that they couldn't do it. And then there was one company on the other side of the Netherlands, and they made also things where they stick little flowers in the styrofoam for flower festivals. Company was it, and they said, "Do you want a coating?" But I said, "No, I don't want a coating on the figure, because I want to put my pins in." And then they said, the more detail you have on the figure, the more it's gonna cost. So I said, okay, I have to think about it. I'll get back to you. I went with my husband to watch the STL scans. And then I thought, well, maybe we can just smooth it out until you see the lines of my underpants, but not the label. Because every adjustment you took to smooth it out, it was a little bit less expensive. So on my dress form, you actually see a tiny bit of the label of my underwear, and also some lines of my bra, and but not as yeah, detailed as the first scan because the
Okay.
price went up. Yeah, yeah. But I really like, and that's yeah, that was for me a really big deal. I have lovely rolls. I have a kind of a muffin toppy, and I have some little rolls, and they are all visible on the dress form. So now, if I drape for a pattern, I can really specifically uh, wrap my rolls in the best way. And that was really for me was a big deal because if you are taking the tin foil or the cling foil method or the duct tape method to make a dress form, you squish your fat and then it goes into places where it doesn't really is like a kind of a corset. And then I thought, well, that is not my body. I want to make clothing that I can be so as comfortable as possible, as well made as possible. But I don't want to feel like I have kind of made clothing for a corseted body. And that's kind of also the thing that I really love about my dress form instead of having another dress form because the posture and the shape is really different. So that was for me, and I'm still when I look at my because it's upstairs in the workroom. It's such a mess. I'm not gonna show you. Yeah,
Being able to do the 3D scan gave you a more accurate picture of your body shape, which
exactly.
then helps you when you're fitting your clothing
Yeah,
because you're fitting almost to yourself. But
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
so how long did this whole process take? From the time you
Uh,
came up with the idea until you got your styrofoam form?
from November 22 to April 23, half a year. But that's also with all the research that I would now not have to do anymore. Yeah, it took about 6 months from the idea and then working it out. And then, yeah, I was just working and doing things. This is a hobby, passion project. So it's not like my daytime job or anything. And it was the most time it took was to gathering information and kind of saving up because it is costly and it depends on where you source your materials and source your the technical abilities of people because you need the technical abilities of people or yourself to get the 3D scan and those scans are so expensive. There are a couple of thousands of dollars, euros. So it's not like every corner in the city has a 3D scanner lined up to do things. So you really have to find the people to help you, and then actually the actual figure also. Yeah, it depends what kind of prices the factory has because you basically you're making a prototype. You are making just one of a kind. It's not like you order 10 and then the price goes down if you order 10 instead of one, but you order one. So they have to yeah, that it costs money to make the factory make a one of a kind figure torso. Yeah.
But still, I have a friend who went to one of these companies that does
Yeah.
these on a regular basis, makes dress forms, and she spent quite a bit of money. So I can see where doing it yourself and finding the company and it
Right.
it does cut the price down and maybe makes it getting a custom dress form is now within reach if you're willing to do some of the legwork.
That is so true because companies like Ditto Form and Beatrice Forms, I think, they are only available in the US and Canada, I think. So they are not at all available here in Europe. And I know that Alvanon Alvanon dress forms,
Hmm.
but they're with more accurate sizes. But those dress forms are like 2,500 euros each. So I'm not going to do that. And still, shape and posture is everything, because it makes all the difference if you make a garment that doesn't really fit. Because I thought, oh, I'm gonna make patterns and I'm gonna use straight rulers to make my patterns. No, there is not one single straight line on my dress form. It all has to be um, draped and curved, and use your hands a lot to make the fabric go in a dart, and a curved dart. And yeah, there is not, yeah, the side seams of my trousers maybe, but that's the only straight line. Yeah, that's it takes a whole different kind of thinking about patterns, because when I'm not really that good in pattern making, because I never learned it, and I was always like um, putting some fabric over my arm and then thinking, oh yeah, well this will do, and then just picking up scissors and then cut on my arm where the fabric hanged from my arm. So I'm not really a technical pattern making person with mathematics and measurements and metrics, and this is really my best instrument to make my own clothes, but also to embrace your curves more, because you actually see them. That was really funny when I took the torso out of the box, and then I was a little shocked, I must say, because you actually see your size as a third person. So that was so weird. But then I hugged her and I said to her, "We're gonna make great things." And then my husband put her on the stand, and I got to work. So
Where did you find the stand?
online marketplace. It's from an old dress form.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what you Craigslist.
Craigslist, yes.
Right,
Uh-huh.
yeah, something like that, but done in the Netherlands. And I just picked it up some time, and then yeah, that's a good question, because you really have to measure the stand cylinder, what that you are going to use for the torso, because otherwise, if you don't measure that, it could be too large, too small. It might damage the inside of the torso, and you really don't want that, because yeah, it's costly. So yeah, that's a big deal, to in the whole process make sure that you have already a sense of what stands am I gonna use. Yeah, because otherwise it's gonna be tricky and damaging to the dress form if you are too late in that process for thinking about that. Yeah,
Okay. That makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
So after you did all this research and after you got your own dress form,
yeah.
you decided to share this information. So you've created a website.
Yes, yes. Well, I have a background in making instructions, SOPs, standard operating procedures, manuals. So I know how to do that, and and the questions I got from it, because I was so talkative about it. People said, how are you doing this? How are you doing this? And I was sending people little notes and examples and little photographs, not of the actually dress form, because that's a private thing. It's just me in my underwear, so I'm not gonna send anyone a picture of me in my underwear. But then I thought, oh, this is very handy to have put together, to be able to send people just a link with this is a process. So it just came about because people were asking questions, and I thought, well, I might as well make a website out of it. And then I first put the Dutch one on. It's called paspoepopmaat.nl. And then I thought, well, I really you have to have a English one as well. So I made customdressform.com, and I was so surprised that the URL was still available because I thought it's not going to be available. And then I just typed it in, and I could just buy it. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah, that was a really surprise because I thought, oh, I have to make a whole sentence kind of how to make your custom dress form. No, it was just customdressform.com was available. So that was fun.
It was waiting for you.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is amazing. I never would have thought about doing this myself, but now I'm intrigued and because
Yeah.
I have a dress form, but it's not to my specifications. And
Right.
sometimes when I put when I like it doesn't have the real estate here at the front
Exactly.
that I have. And so
Exactly.
sometimes I put some tops on there that I've made and they don't hang quite the way they do on
Right.
my own
Yeah.
body. So
Yeah.
it would be fabulous to have a custom dress form.
Yeah. Yeah. I can I can highly recommend it. And also because you um buying clothing is for a lot of people with kind of a different size or shape, or it can be frustrating. And of course, no one is really capable of sewing, but so much people are. Well, in the Netherlands, less, I have to say, because now people know that I'm doing this for my hobby, and then they say, "Oh, can you make us that?" No, no, I'm not going to make anything for anybody else. Yeah, so that's a strict rule for me. But just to get into you don't have to get to a tailor or a really expensive person or a really expensive company or to make sure that you have the best dress form for you. And I myself, I don't think I'm gonna lose weight yeah, or that my body changes. I think not really. I'm 44, so yeah, just, this is it. It's fine. But so then I'm sure that I can use this dress form for many years. And if the size adds a bit up or going a bit down, that doesn't really matter. But the posture, the bone structure,
Hmm.
and the general shape is still the same. So it's yeah, it's just my best instrument after my sewing machine. Yeah, yeah.
So tell us again where we can find the information.
Well, the website is called customdressform.com. It runs on a local server, so it's not really findable in Google. I just made it as simple and as tiny as possible, just to get the link out there. But yeah, that's where you can find it. And people say, "Oh, can I ask you questions about the whole process?" And I thought, and I also say no, because everything I know is on the website, and it really makes a difference that you gather the information for you locally, so you can get a train ride to a 3D scan, that you can that the styrofoam company can send you a package without getting it from across the world, but just local. There are so many little companies and freelancers and people available that do this kind of work, and I think it's really important that people find that information in their local area. And it's also a really really fun project because you get to meet people and talk about this project, and that's really fun.
Well, this has been wonderful. I am so glad that you reached out
Thank
because
you.
I think that there are a lot of people out there who would love to do this.
Yeah, I reached out to sewing communities just to get the word out, And I'm so grateful that you replied. It was so fun to share this. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, really.
I'm definitely going to explore this for myself because I could use a custom dress form.
Yeah. And you love her. It will be your best friend.
I hope you enjoyed that interview, not just for the information, but also because when I finished talking to Inge, I kept thinking to myself, what a shame that we live on opposite sides of the planet, because she would be such a wonderful sewing buddy. And I have started looking into getting a custom dress form made. I live in a rural area, so we don't have a lot of those big companies around us, but I did discover that Montana State University will do body scans for you. So you might also check a local university or college campus and see if they've got a program. Maybe one of their students would be willing to do the scans for you. And again, the information is at www.customdressform.com. It's all laid out there in a very clear format. And as Inge said, this is a passion project for her. She's not making any money. She just wants to share the information with other sewists around the world. So that's it for this episode. I'm going to leave you with my standard reminder that feedback is always welcome. Ratings and reviews are also always welcome at Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to the podcast. The show notes page is at the podcast website, which is www.thestraightstitchpodcast.com. My website is www.janetzabo.com. And from there, you can get links to my Big Sky Knitting Designs website and also to my blog. So if you want to see what I'm sewing, the blog is the place to go because that's got all the pictures and information. So until next week, and it will be next week, I hope that you have a great week and that you get to go sew something.